Sophie, freshly graduated and brimming with enthusiasm, felt her heart race as she returned to her hometown. The road's asphalt seemed to reflect her childhood memories and the aspiration to create something significant. She had an ambitious project in mind, to produce a documentary focused on the experiences of Black domestic workers. This documentary will touch hearts and open minds, she thought, as she entered the small town where she was born and raised. Walking through the familiar streets, Sophie remembered the faces that shaped her childhood. She knew that capturing the stories of these women would be a challenge, but believed in the transformative power of cinema. Determined, she sought out Clarice Brown, a respected figure in the community. Clarice was known not only for her hard work, but also for her wisdom and the stories she held. "Clarice, I need your help to tell the true story of these women," Sophie said, determination in her eyes. Clarice, with her calm demeanor and insightful gaze, immediately agreed. "Sophie, I trust you. Let's show the world the strength and resilience of our women," replied Clarice, aware of the importance of giving voice to those who often went unseen. Together, they began planning how they would interview other women and which stories needed to be told. The first filming began at Clarice's house, where she talked about her childhood and the challenges she faced as a domestic worker. The project soon attracted the attention of other women in the community, and Sophie felt she was on the right path. Each day of filming was a new discovery, a revelation of the hardships and triumphs of these women. However, Sophie also began to notice the growing tension around her. Some people in the town did not like the idea of exposing these truths. "This won't be easy, but we need to continue," she told herself, determined to carry the project forward. The work was just beginning, but Sophie knew she had found something truly powerful. The life stories that began to emerge in the filming were raw and compelling. "We're going to make history," Sophie said to Clarice, as they reviewed the recorded material. Sophie felt that, despite the difficulties, she was on the right path to create a documentary that would truly make a difference. Clarice Brown, with her serene and firm demeanor, was a central figure in the community. A domestic worker for Sarah Whitfield, she had stories that dated back to her childhood. When Sophie approached her, Clarice knew this was a unique opportunity. "Sophie, my life has many chapters that need to be told." "I'm ready," Clarice said, with an encouraging smile. During the filming, Clarice opened her heart, sharing the challenges she faced. "Being a Black woman and a domestic worker is not easy," she began. She recounted episodes of racism and discrimination, but also moments of joy and overcoming. Sarah Whitfield, her current employer, had her own complexities. Although there were moments of kindness, there was an invisible wall of inequality that Clarice always felt. The recordings took place in Clarice's house, where she felt most comfortable talking about her life. "This is my refuge," she said, showing the small details that made up her home. She shared stories about her children, her interrupted dreams, and her constant struggle for dignity. Each word from Clarice was a testament to resilience. Sophie, always attentive, knew that these stories would be the pulsating heart of the documentary. Sarah Whitfield, upon learning about the project, had a mixed reaction. "Clarice, do you really think this is necessary?" she asked with a look of concern. "Yes, Sarah. People need to know what we really lived through," Clarice replied, with a firmness that brooked no argument. The relationship between employer and employee began to show its true colors under the watchful eye of Sophie's camera. Gradually, other domestic workers became interested in the project, inspired by Clarice's courage. "If she can, I can too," they said among themselves. Clarice became a natural leader, encouraging her colleagues to speak out. "Our voices need to be heard," she affirmed, convinced of the impact the documentary would have. Sophie, seeing the mobilization of the women, felt increasingly motivated. During one of the filming sessions, Clarice revealed a striking episode from her youth. "The first time I felt the weight of racism was when... Her voice trembled, but she continued, aware of the importance of her narrative. Sophie, behind the camera, felt each word as a blow, but also as a flame of resistance. Clarice's stories were transforming into something larger than either could have imagined. The news of Sophie's documentary quickly spread through the community, reaching Martha Johnson. Martha, known for her frankness and determination, was facing hard times. Recently fired by Helen Adams, she was now working for Lucy Matthews, a somewhat more understanding employer. "Clarice told me about your project, Sophie. I want to be part of it," said Martha without hesitation. During her initial interviews, Martha was outspoken. "Working for Helen Adams was hell," she began. Martha detailed the verbal abuse and covert racism she endured. Each account was a sharp knife slicing through the veil of hypocrisy that covered the town. Lucy Matthews, although fairer, also had her flaws, and Martha made it a point to highlight each one. "It's not just about being good or bad. It's about understanding our value as human beings," she emphasized. Sophie knew that Martha would bring a new perspective to the documentary. Unlike Clarice, who had a more peaceful manner, Martha was fire and fury. "We need both sides of the coin," Sophie thought, as she adjusted the camera. Martha's stories were filled with episodes of resistance and struggle. "I've never kept quiet, and I'm not about to start now," Martha declared with conviction. Clarice and Martha, although different in temperament, complemented each other in the project. Together, they showcased the diversity of experiences of Black domestic workers. "Sophie, what you are doing is important. These stories need to be told," Martha said with a sparkle in her eyes. The filming with Martha brought new energy to the documentary, an intensity that Sophie knew would capture the audience's attention. As the recordings progressed, Martha began to notice changes in herself. "This documentary is making me reflect on many things," she confided to Clarice. "We've always known how valid our struggle is, but seeing it documented, it's powerful," Clarice responded. The friendship between the two grew stronger, and Sophie captured each moment of complicity and mutual support. Martha's relationship with Lucy Matthews also began to transform. "Lucy, you need to understand that your support is essential for this documentary to see the light of day," Martha said. Lucy, moved by Martha's frankness, began to reconsider her own role in the power dynamic. "I'll do whatever I can to help," Lucy promised, showing a rare moment of empathy. As the documentary took shape, Sophie, Clarice, and Martha began facing unexpected challenges. The small town, once a welcoming home, now seemed full of obstacles. "Every time we go out to film, I feel like we are being watched," said Sophie, uneasy. The three women noticed suspicious glances and whispers wherever they went. The veiled threats soon became more explicit. One night, while Sophie was reviewing footage at Clarice's house, a rock was thrown through the window. "You need to stop this," shouted a voice from outside. Martha ran outside but found no one. "They are afraid of the truth," said Clarice, trying to calm the mood. Sophie, despite the scare, was determined to continue. "We can't give up now," she stated. The situation became even more complicated when Sophie was summoned to testify at the local police station. "You are being accused of inciting public disorder," the officer informed her in an unfriendly tone. Nervous, Sophie explained that the documentary only sought to report the truth. "We're not here to cause trouble, but to show reality," she said, keeping her composure. Clarice and Martha, waiting outside, were anxious. "We'll face this together," Clarice assured. In addition to threats and intimidation, technical issues began to arise. The filming equipment seemed to fail at the most critical moments. "I checked this yesterday, it was working perfectly," said Sophie, frustrated. Martha suspected sabotage. "They don't want these stories to be told," she suggested. Sophie decided to seek technical help from a trusted friend. "We need to make sure nothing stops us from continuing," she concluded. Community support was also ambiguous. While some domestic workers supported the project, others feared reprisals. "I can't appear in the documentary. My job is at risk," confided one to Clarice. "I understand your fear, but your stories are important," Clarice replied, trying to encourage her. The tension between the desire for change and the fear of consequences was palpable. Amidst the challenges, moments of solidarity also emerged. "We are not alone," Sophie said, moved, upon receiving an anonymous letter of support. Small gestures of encouragement came from unexpected places. "Stay strong, you are making a difference," the letter read. Martha, always the more skeptical, felt a spark of hope. "Maybe, just maybe, things can change," she murmured to herself. As more people in the town became aware of the content of the documentary, hostile reactions soon followed. Malicious comments and disapproving glances became constant. "These women are trying to destroy our reputation," whispered some citizens in public places. Sophie, Clarice, and Martha felt the weight of prejudice firsthand. "We are stirring up a hornet's nest," said Martha, always straightforward. The three women began to receive direct threats. Anonymous letters and intimidating phone calls became frequent. "You will pay dearly for this," one of the letters read. Sophie, with a heavy heart, began to question whether she had made the right choice. "Will we be able to change anything?" she asked Clarice. "Every step is a victory, Sophie. We cannot back down," Clarice replied firmly. Local leaders also began to mobilize against the documentary. A meeting was convened at the city hall to discuss the impact of the film. "This is an affront to our values," proclaimed the mayor. Some community members defended freedom of speech, but they were in the minority. "We are just showing the truth," Sophie argued, present at the meeting. The tension in the air was almost palpable. The local media also took sides, often negatively. Sensational headlines appeared in newspapers. "Documentary spreads lies and chaos," read one of them. Clarice and Martha, seeing the news, felt their indignation grow. "They are distorting everything," Martha complained. Sophie tried to stay calm and focus on the greater purpose. "We need to stay strong and united," she said, trying to lift the group's spirits. In addition to external pressures, internal conflicts began to emerge. "Are we risking our lives for nothing?" Martha questioned, exhausted. "Every story we tell is a step towards change," Clarice reaffirmed. Differences in opinion began to strain the relationship between the women. Sophie, feeling the weight of responsibility, tried to mediate the conflicts. "We need to remember why we started this," she said, seeking to reconnect everyone to the original purpose. In a moment of despair, Clarice had a heartfelt conversation with Sophie.
"I'm tired, Sophie.
I don't know if I can continue," she confessed, tears in her eyes. Sophie hugged her, feeling the pain and frustration. "We need you, Clarice. Without you, the documentary loses its soul," she said, trying to comfort her. This emotional exchange reignited both of their determinations. Finally, the day of the documentary's release arrived. Sophie, Clarice, and Martha gathered to watch the premiere. "It's now," said Sophie, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. The documentary was broadcast on an online platform, quickly attracting the attention of many viewers. "Get ready. This is going to be big," Martha commented, trying to disguise her anxiety. The response was immediate. Social media buzzed with comments and shares. "This documentary is a milestone," wrote one user. "Finally, someone is speaking the truth," commented another. Sophie monitored the online reactions, feeling a wave of relief and satisfaction. "We are making an impact," she said, smiling at Clarice and Martha. They, in turn, felt a mix of pride and apprehension. However, along with the praise came harsh criticism. "This is a disgrace to our town," read one comment. The dissenting voices were loud and aggressive, and some residents demanded the documentary be taken down. "We cannot let them silence us," declared Clarice, firm in her stance. Martha, always ready for the fight, agreed. "Let them talk. Our truth is stronger," she said. The town was in turmoil. Support groups for the documentary began to form, organizing debates and meetings to discuss the issues raised by the film. "We need to seize this opportunity to promote real change," said a local activist. Conversely, conservative groups organized protests. "This does not represent our town," they chanted in unison. The polarization was clear and intense. At Sophie's house, an emergency meeting was convened. "We need to be prepared for what comes next," she said, concerned about potential legal and social repercussions. Clarice and Martha were determined to face any adversity. "We've been through worse. Together we are stronger," declared Clarice. Martha, agreeing, added, "We'll show that we are not afraid." The unity between them was evident and inspiring. The pressure on the three women increased daily, but so did the support from unexpected allies. "I received a message from a human rights group," said Sophie, excited. "They want to help promote the documentary nationally." Clarice and Martha exchanged hopeful looks. "We are reaching people beyond our expectations," said Martha, moved. The success of the documentary also brought new challenges. "We need to maintain the safety of all involved," advised a lawyer friend of Sophie. "Some threats are becoming more serious." Clarice, Martha, and Sophie knew they needed to be cautious. "We'll continue carefully, but we won't give up," reaffirmed Sophie, determined to move forward. As the documentary gained notoriety, an unexpected threat emerged. A powerful local businesswoman, known for her influence, summoned Sophie for a meeting. "I will do everything to take this documentary down," stated Margareth Adams bluntly. Sophie, facing her, knew Margareth had the means to fulfill her threat. "Why are you so determined to silence us?" asked Sophie, seeking to understand the motivation behind the hostility. Margareth owned several properties and businesses in the town and feared the documentary could harm her way of life. "This is an affront to our way of life," she declared coldly. Sophie tried to argue that the film was a quest for truth and justice, but Margareth was unmoved. "This documentary needs to disappear," she insisted, offering a substantial sum of money for Sophie to pull the film. "I can't do that, Margareth. This work means too much to many people," Sophie responded, refusing the offer. Sophie's refusal heightened the tension. Margareth began using her influence to pressure exhibition platforms and sponsors of the documentary. "I'm receiving cancellation notices," Sophie said worriedly as she read the emails. Clarice and Martha, learning of the situation, were alarmed. "This woman has a lot of power. We need a strategy," said Martha, always ready for combat. To counter the pressure, Sophie decided to seek legal help. A lawyer friend offered his services pro bono. "We'll ensure the documentary stays on air. She can't censor the truth," he stated confidently. Meanwhile, Clarice and Martha mobilized the community. "We need everyone's support to show that we will not be silenced," said Clarice, organizing a community meeting. Local solidarity began to grow, with many people offering support. Seeing the resistance, Margareth intensified her actions. "I will ruin your lives," she threatened in a call to Sophie. But the young filmmaker, strengthened by the growing support, remained steadfast. "The truth will prevail, Margareth. We will not give up," she replied, hanging up the phone. Each day was a new battle, but Sophie, Clarice, and Martha were determined not to back down. The fight against Margareth became a symbol of resistance against racism and oppression in the town. News about the dispute spread, attracting national media attention. "This story needs to be told," said a report on the documentary and the battle to keep it on air. Public pressure began to turn against Margareth, who, realizing the tide was changing, attempted to soften her approach. "Maybe we can find a middle ground," she suggested. But Sophie knew there could be no compromise when the truth was at stake. After the release of the documentary, repercussions began to directly affect the lives of the protagonists. Clarice was called into Sarah Whitfield's office, her employer, for an unexpected conversation. "Clarice, we need to talk about the documentary," Sarah began with a serious tone. Clarice, anticipating what was to come, remained calm. "Yes, Mrs. Whitfield. I am ready to listen," she replied with dignity. Sarah, visibly uncomfortable, explained that social pressures and the negative impact on her family's image made it unsustainable to keep Clarice employed. "I'm very sorry, Clarice, but I have no choice but to let you go," she said, avoiding direct eye contact. Clarice, feeling a mix of sadness and relief, responded serenely. "I understand, Mrs. Whitfield. Thank you for the years of work. I will go my own way," she said without showing her hurt. Leaving Sarah's house for the last time, Clarice felt the weight of uncertainty, but also the freedom to pursue new paths. This could be an opportunity for something better, she thought, as she walked through the city streets. When she met with Sophie and Martha, she shared the news. "Sarah fired me," she said bluntly. Sophie, distressed, hugged her. "Clarice, we will find a solution. You are not alone," she affirmed, with conviction. Without wasting time, Clarice began exploring new possibilities. "I've always wanted to study more, and maybe now is the time," she confided to Martha. Sophie suggested they use the visibility of the documentary to help Clarice. "Let's organize a community event to raise funds for your studies," she proposed. Martha, always the strategist, helped plan every detail. "We're going to make this happen," she said, determined. The event was a success. The community came together in support of Clarice, showing gratitude for her courage and dedication. "Clarice, you are an inspiration to all of us," said one of the residents, handing over a donation. Clarice, moved, felt the warmth of support around her. "Thank you, everyone. This is just the beginning of a new journey," she declared, with tears in her eyes. The event not only raised funds but also strengthened community ties. With the money raised, Clarice enrolled in a technical course in administration. "I've always wanted to understand more about managing a business," she explained, excited about the prospect of a different future. Sophie and Martha supported her every step of the way, celebrating her achievements. "You'll go far, Clarice," Martha said, proud of her friend. Sophie, always with her camera ready, documented every moment of this new phase. Clarice found in education a new source of strength and purpose. "Studying is opening doors to a better future," she thought, as she dedicated herself to her studies. She knew the path would be challenging, but was determined to overcome each obstacle. Her experiences as a domestic worker now served as motivation to fight for a more dignified and full life. "This is my chance to change the narrative," she told herself. The release of the documentary brought not just challenges. It also provided a new sense of empowerment for Martha Johnson. Inspired by Clarice's courage and the visibility the documentary brought, Martha made the most difficult decision of her life. "It's time to leave my abusive husband," she told Sophie and Clarice, with renewed determination. Her friends, concerned yet supportive, promised to help her every step of the way. Martha began to plan her departure carefully. "I can't just leave. I need to ensure my children are safe," she thought, as she made contacts and looked for a safe place to shelter. Sophie and Clarice helped organize everything in secret, fearing the reaction of Martha's husband. "We'll make sure you and the children are protected," Sophie stated firmly. On the day of the escape, Martha and her children were welcomed by a support house for women victims of domestic violence. "You are safe here," said the shelter's coordinator, embracing Martha, the feeling of relief mixed with uncertainty about the future. "It's a new beginning, but I'm ready to face it," Martha thought. Her children, still frightened, found comfort in their mother's constant presence. Lucy Matthews, Martha's new employer, showed unexpected support. "You have a safe place here with me. Don't worry about work for now," Lucy said, offering essential support. Martha, touched by Lucy's empathy, felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you, Lucy. I will do my best to start over," she promised. This new dynamic brought a sense of hope that Martha hadn't felt in years. Over time, Martha began to rebuild her life. "I want to help other women who went through what I did," she decided, signing up as a volunteer at the shelter where she was staying. Her experience and strength became a source of inspiration for other women. "You showed me that it's possible to start over," said one of the shelter residents. Martha, moved, knew she was on the right path. Martha's life began to transform in every way. "I'm going to get qualified and look for a better job," she decided, starting professional training courses. The journey wasn't easy, but every small achievement was celebrated. "I'm building a future for myself and my children," she thought, with a smile on her face. Sophie and Clarice, always there, continued to support Martha at every step. Martha's children also began to adapt to the new reality. "Mommy, are we safe now?" asked the youngest. "Yes, my love. We are safe, and we will be okay," Martha replied, feeling a mix of relief and hope. The new routine brought challenges, but also a freedom Martha hadn't experienced in a long time. We are together, and that's what matters, she thought. The success of the documentary opened doors for Sophie in ways she never imagined. While browsing through countless messages of support, she came across an email that would change her life. "We would like to invite you to an interview at our production company in New York. Read the message," sent by a renowned film production company. Sophie, in disbelief, read the email several times before sharing the news with Clarice and Martha. "This is real. They want to hire me," she said, with tears of happiness in her eyes. Clarice and Martha were thrilled for their friend. "You deserve this, Sophie. This documentary was just the beginning," said Clarice, proudly. "New York will give you the opportunities you've always dreamed of," added Martha, with a smile. Sophie, although excited, felt a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. "It's going to be hard to leave you and this town," she confessed. "But it's a unique opportunity," she added, trying to balance her euphoria with the anticipation of missing them. The interview in New York was scheduled for the following week. Nervous yet confident, Sophie prepared meticulously. "I need to show the best of myself and the work we did," she thought, as she reviewed her portfolio. The trip to the big city was a reality shock and a whirlwind of emotions. "New York is so different from everything I know," she thought, amazed by the vibrant energy and endless opportunities. The interview was a success. "Your work on the documentary is impressive. We're interested in bringing that vision to our team," the interviewer said enthusiastically. Sophie could hardly believe what she was hearing. "This is really happening," she thought, as she signed the papers for her new position. The offer included the chance to direct new projects and collaborate with renowned filmmakers. "I'll do everything to honor this opportunity," she promised herself. Back in her hometown, Sophie shared the news with Clarice and Martha. "I got the job," she exclaimed, as her friends hugged her joyfully. "We'll miss you, but we know you'll shine," said Clarice, with tears in her eyes. "This is your chance to make even more of a difference in the world," added Martha, with a proud look. Sophie knew that, despite the distance, the bond between them would remain strong. In the following days, Sophie prepared for the move. "There's so much to pack and organize," she thought, as she packed her bags. Each item packed brought back memories of the documentary and the stories that changed her life. "I'm taking a piece of each of you with me," she said, moved, as she said goodbye to Clarice and Martha. The farewell was bittersweet but filled with promises of reunions and continued mutual support. Arriving in New York, Sophie dove headfirst into her new job. "This is what I've always dreamed of," she thought, as she explored the office and met her colleagues. The projects were challenging and exciting, and each day brought new opportunities for learning and growth. "I'll make every moment here count," she promised, as she planned the next documentary, already envisioning new stories to be told. The impact of the documentary on Sophie's hometown society was profound and multifaceted. Discussions about racism and inequality, once swept under the rug, emerged with force. "We need to talk about what's happening," community leaders said in an open meeting. The streets, previously silent on these issues, began to pulsate with fervent debates. "We can no longer ignore these truths," declared a young activist. Human rights groups and community organizations mobilized, organizing events and talks to discuss the issues raised by the documentary. "This film gave us the opportunity to face our shortcomings and work to improve," said one of the local event organizers. Clarice and Martha, as central figures of the documentary, were invited to speak at several of these gatherings. "Our fight is just beginning," Clarice declared with conviction. However, the reaction was not unanimous. Part of society, especially the more conservative elements, resisted the changes. "This documentary distorts reality and defames us," they claimed in editorials in local newspapers. The polarization was evident, and some events were marked by tensions and confrontations. "We need constructive dialogue, not division," appealed a mediator during a heated debate. Nevertheless, the voices in favor of change gained strength. "The truth can be painful, but it is necessary for progress," said a university professor at a conference on social justice. Local schools began to incorporate discussions on racism and equality into their curricula. Our young people need to understand these issues from an early age, asserted an educator. Clarice and Martha felt their stories were serving a greater purpose. We are planting seeds for a better future, said Martha. Efforts for change also reached local authorities. Politicians and community leaders were pressured to take concrete actions. We need to review our policies and ensure that we are promoting equality, declared a council member. Discussions resulted in proposals for new laws and support programs for domestic workers. We will work to protect the rights of these women and promote a fairer society, promised a legislator. Sophie, following everything from New York, felt a mix of pride and responsibility. This is just the beginning. There is still much to be done, she reflected while planning new projects. She maintained constant contact with Clarice and Martha, who updated her on the developments. Your courage continues to inspire all of us, Sophie said, reinforcing the bonds of friendship and collaboration that had strengthened during the production of the documentary. The documentary also began to receive recognition beyond the city. Film festivals and awards started to highlight Sophie's work and the courage of the protagonists. This story is a testimony to human strength and resilience, said a judge at an independent film festival. Clarice and Martha were invited to participate in panels and discussions in various parts of the country. Our message is reaching more and more people, said Clarice, feeling rejuvenated. The impact of the documentary was transformative not just for society, but especially for Sophie, Clarice, and Martha, whose lives took new directions. Sophie, now in New York, was immersed in her new job but never forgot her roots and the mission that brought her there. Each project I take on carries a bit of what I learned from Clarice and Martha, she reflected, as she directed her next documentary on social injustices. After being fired, Clarice found new strength and direction in her life. Her studies in administration led her to new horizons. I've always wanted to have my own business, she said, determined. With the support of the community and the knowledge she acquired, Clarice opened a small domestic services company, offering better working conditions for her employees. We will treat everyone with the dignity they deserve, she proclaimed, feeling fulfilled. Martha, in turn, found a new purpose in helping other women escape abusive situations and rebuild their lives. No one should go through what I went through, she said, as she organized support groups and training workshops. The shelter where she and her children found refuge became her second home, where her personal experience inspired and guided other victims. You've shown us that we can have a better life, thanked one of the residents. The friendship between Sophie, Clarice, and Martha remained strong, even at a distance. You are my family, Sophie said during a video call. No matter where we are, we will always be connected, added Martha. The three continued to support each other, sharing their victories and challenges. Every step we take is a victory for all of us, affirmed Clarice, feeling the depth of their connection. The children of Clarice and Martha were also deeply impacted by the documentary and the subsequent changes. Our mother is a heroine, said Clarice's eldest son, inspired by his mother's strength and determination. I want to be like her when I grow up, he declared proudly. The new opportunities for study and growth provided by the changes gave the young people a new perspective on their own lives and futures. The town, despite initial resistance, began to adapt to the new realities and discussions brought about by the documentary. We still have much to improve, but we are on the right path, said a community leader. Local initiatives to promote equality and combat racism continued to grow, and the legacy of the documentary was felt in every new action and policy implemented. This is the power of truth and courage, Sophie reflected. Sophie, Clarice, and Martha, each in their own way, continued to fight for justice and equality. Change begins with a story, Sophie thought, as she filmed her next project. Clarice, managing her company, saw in each employee a chance to make a difference. We are building something bigger, she said with hope. Martha, in her work at the shelter, felt that her life's mission was just beginning. Every woman we help is a victory, she concluded with conviction.